Hi guys, welcome to Clay with CFA. We're at Cadell Fine Arts today, and I'm Miss Amanda.
And I'm Miss Sam.
And welcome to our playground. So today, guys, I'm going to take you of our tour of the studio at Cadell Fine Arts. We're going to look at some of the tools and materials that we use during our ceramic classes. After we get done with our tour, we're going to start on a slab project. We'll be making a platter using lace for texture and a plastic dish as our mold.
If you are in need of food for you and your family, you can call the Greater Cleveland Food Bank at 216-738-2067. They are open Mondays through Friday from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. and offer services that can help you locate food immediately and apply for benefits, including food stamps. Visit their website at findfoodbank.org. You can also reach out to the Hunger Network of Greater Cleveland by calling 216-619-8155 or by visiting their website, hungernetwork.org. The Cleveland Metropolitan School District is also providing meals to children at 22 locations. Call 216-838-0000 or visit their website, clevelandmetroschools.org.
So I'd like to take you guys on a little tour of our playground before we get started today. At Cadell Fine Arts, we use 4 different types of clay. We have a white clay, which is number 105. We have a buff clay at number 25. We also have a red clay, which is number 67. And in this bin right here is all of our mixed bits. So at the end of the day, all those pieces that kind of get mushed together, they can get added to that bin and be reused. Since we're in the area, we're going to step over and take a look at the recycling area to see how we repurpose our clay. At the end of the day, when you have all your scraps and bits and pieces and such, they get broken down and added to this bin in here. So we want to break our pieces down into about quarter size or smaller pieces and throw them in the bin. When you guys are done for the day, staff or your art instructor will add those pieces into a slurry of water and vinegar mix, and after a few days it will turn into this lovely pile of mush. This mush then gets added to a plaster bat. The whole bat will get filled. It'll sit for about 4 hours, and then after 4 hours we'll cut it into sections like this. It gets lifted up and flipped over to dry on the other side, and that becomes your fresh clay for the next day. So now over to our tool table. As you can see, we have individualized buckets for each student to be able to use. All of your basic supplies can be found in this bucket. Also, you can use the bucket. We individualize the tool sets to make sure at the end of each class session that everything can be sanitized. Inside your tool bucket, you will find a basic set of paintbrushes and a glaze tray, a basic set of tools that will be needed for throwing on the wheel, and then also a basic set of tools for sculpting. All of these things are provided for you during these classes, and all of our classes and programs at Cadell Fine Arts are free. Along with all of your clay and tools being provided at Cadell Fine Arts, we also provide glazes that you'll need to complete your projects. We have a large variety of different types of glazes. We have element glazes, crystals, gloss, and underglaze. And when you guys come and sign up for your free classes at Cadell Fine Arts, I'll teach you all about how each one works. Another large piece of equipment that we have here at Cadell Fine Arts is our slab roller. So you can always go the old-fashioned route and use a regular rolling pin to roll out your clay, but with the slab roller here, you can do a large piece of clay very quickly without a whole lot of elbow grease. So you put your clay in between the fabric over here and give it a good spin, and you end up with a nice flat slab to work with. No ceramic studio would be complete without a potter's wheel. At Cadell Fine Arts, we offer two different types of wheel. We have an old-fashioned manual wheel that's used by kinetic force. You have to kick the piece at the bottom back and forth to get it going. But we also have two electric wheels available currently for use, and all it takes is a little push of the foot to get it going, and you can create lots of beautiful things. At Cadell Fine Arts, we also have a plethora of different ceramic classes available. Currently, we have a slip casting program, we have an intro to ceramics class, and we have 4 adult open studios. My favorite class is youth clay. Our youth clay program is for ages 8 to 17, although we do let younger students in with a grown-up. If you're interested in registering for any of those programs, please call 216-664-4183. Now we're going to head back to our slip casting and kiln rooms with Miss Sam.
Thank you, Amanda, for that lovely tour of the studio. We are now in the middle room where we do our slip casting classes. So here we have several different molds. This is a very small selection of what we offer. Every season it gets switched out so that everybody can get a chance to try something new in our slip casting class. Here is where we do our pouring into the mold. Slip casting consists of pouring liquid clay into a mold, banding it with a rubber band, and letting it sit for a period of time. Then it is poured out, and whatever is left inside of the cast will coat the inside, and you will end up with a finished piece to glaze. Here we have a greenware piece of a slip casting mold that we did of a mug. This is when it comes out of the kiln, and it is a bisqueware piece. And here is a smaller version of what we have here, and this is after it's been glazed. So that kind of gives you an idea of a finished piece from our slip casting class. Next, I'm going to have you follow me into the kiln room where I'm going to show you our 2 big, beautiful kilns. So we are now back here in the kiln room. We have 2 large industrial-sized kilns where we try to attempt to do at least 2 firings a week. In an attempt to be as sustainable as possible, we try to fit as many pieces in our kiln as possible. Typically, we like to split them up between the 2 kilns and do a greenware, bisqueware firing in the front kiln, and in our back kiln, we do most of our glazeware. But since we are at a smaller capacity at this moment, we are kind of combining them in a safe way. So here we have some finished pieces from some of our students. This is a glazeware piece. Absolutely beautiful. This was not a mold, this is something that somebody had hand built. And we have some examples of our bisqueware pieces in here as well. When we do a firing, we use low fire clay in this studio. For our greenware bisqueware pieces, we use cone 04. The temperatures for our cone 04 firing is 1,940 degrees Fahrenheit, and for our glazeware pieces, we use cone 06. And our temperature for our 06 firing is 1,830 degrees Fahrenheit. So they will need at least a cool down period of 24 hours before we take them out safely. Back here is staff only for the time being because we want to ensure the safety of all of our patrons. So now we are going to take a quick break and Amanda and I are going to start our project.
If you are in need of food for you and your family, you can call the Greater Cleveland Food Bank at 216-738-2067. They are open Mondays through Friday from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. and offer services that can help you locate food immediately and apply for benefits, including food stamps. Visit their website at findfoodbank.org. You can also reach out to the Hunger Network of Greater Cleveland by calling 216-619-8155 or by visiting their website, hungernetwork.org. The Cleveland Metropolitan School District is also providing meals to children at 22 locations. Call 216-838-0000 or visit their website, clevelandmetroschools.org.
Welcome back to Clay with CFA. Before we begin our project, I'm going to teach you how to wedge your clay on our clay bats here. I have here buff clay, and what we're going to do is we're going to wedge it, and wedging is the technique where you knead the clay in order to get rid of any air pockets that may be there, and if there are air pockets present, that can be a problem later when we fire our pieces and it can cause it to combust. So we are going to make sure that that doesn't happen today. And the technique we're going to be using is called the ram's head technique. And when we wedge, we're going to be using a kneading motion and we are going to create a nice homogeneous piece before we take it over to the slab roller. So I'm going to teach you how to do the ram's head technique to properly wedge your clay. So here I have buff clay, and I'm going to square it up first. So I'm going to take it, and I'm just going to kind of smash it down here on the bat. And I'm going to press down, and you need to use a bit of force. And get it into a nice square, so it's a little bit easier to work with. Take all your frustrations out here. I'm going to flatten it a little bit more. All right. Now when we're kneading, we're going to kind of be pretending like we're kneading bread. So I'm going to take my hands and I'm going to kind of press it together and press down. And I'm going to use a lot of force and pressure. And the reason why we call it a ram's head technique is because as you're rolling, you're going to see here that it almost kind of looks like that ram's head right there. Okay. And I'm going to keep pressing and pushing and get all those air pockets out. You can kind of tap it down. And you'll see this nice roll happening here. That's when you know that you're doing it properly. All right, now I'm going to kind of smash it down a few more times so we can get it flattened, because when we take it over to our slab roller, we want it to be less than about 2 fingers wide so that it doesn't put a lot of pressure on our machine. So I'm going to smash this down. And kind of press with my palms of my hands and get it flattened You can also kind of wiggle it a little bit so that we can kind of elongate that shape, because our slab rollers don't really make our clay wider, it makes it longer. And for this project, when we are making our platter, we want to make sure that it's nice and long. All right, and there you have it. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to transport it over, and we are going to take it to our slab roller and begin our project. Okay, now that our clay is properly wedged, we are going to move on and use our slab roller here. Our slab roller, again, is 1/4 of an inch. It's a little bit thicker so that we can ensure that our piece is not too fragile. And what I'm going to teach you here is how we use our make the bed method. So first we are going to begin by lifting up this piece of canvas. This just kind of protects your clay and our machinery here. So I'm going to flip it over. And by make the bed, we have here some cloth. Every student is given their own pieces of cloth to use for our slab roller. And this just makes sure that there isn't any contamination with our clay, and also to just keep in mind right now while we're trying to be as sanitary as possible. So here I'm kind of smoothing out our sheet for our bed, and I'm going to put my little clay baby to sleep. I put him in the middle here, and I tuck him in with our next sheet. And I'm going to go ahead and smooth that out so we don't have too many wrinkles here. Move my board because you want to make sure that there's nothing else on your slab roller. And now I'm going to place my canvas back on top. Now we're going to give it a nice big roll, and we're going to go over all of our clay until we get to where it says stop here. Keep rolling, rolling, rolling. And then we're going to go back. This gives us a nice, even flattening. You just want to make sure you go far enough so that we can lift this up. Now you have a nice flat piece of clay here. I'm going to lift off my top sheet. And I have here a metal rib tool, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of smooth this out a little bit before we use our lace for our design for our platter. So I'm going to give it a nice quick rub with the rib tool, because we can see a little bit. You might not be able to see it on camera, but I can see it, our canvas showing up a little bit. We have a little bit of rollover that we're just going to remove here because we're probably not going to need him. Okay, so we have it nice and even and free of any textures, and now we can add our lace for our design. So what I'm going to do is place it about halfway on top of my clay so that I get all these lovely designs. We're going to make sure that our clay is free of any debris because that will get stuck inside. And now that we have our lace placed on, we're going to take our cloth again, lay it on top, and spread it out. And we're going to give it another roll. So we've made our bed, we're putting the canvas back on top, and we're going to roll it one more time. Just keep rolling. Kind of makes you feel like a captain on a ship. A little bit more, make sure that we cover our whole piece and roll it back. Lift this off. And now we have our impression of our lace here. We can now remove our lace and see this lovely design. Perfect. See any little bits we can remove here real quick? That just happens. And if there are any imperfections, we can just go over it with our rib tool real quick. And now we are going to place our cloth back on top, and I'm going to give it a flip, and we are going to put some plastic wrap on the bottom so that we can then move on to the next portion of our project. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to swiftly flip it, flatten it, and release it from this cloth here. Again, I'm going to take my rib tool, and you might see some wrinkles on the back. To get our piece nice and finished and polished looking, we're going to get rid of any wrinkles that might be on the bottom as well. So again, I'm just going over with my rib tool, smoothing out those wrinkles. And I could tell that I did a pretty nice job wedging my clay. I don't see many air bubbles or any air pockets. So we know that we did a good job and that we won't have any we should not have any problems in our kiln. Okay, we're ready for our plastic wrap. And we're going to just gently place that on. Make sure we don't have any wrinkles again. Smooth it out as well as we can. And I'm going to hand it off to Amanda, and she's going to show you how to make the shape of our platter.
Thanks, Sam, for getting our slab started for the platter that we're going to make today. So the reason that Miss Sam added this plastic wrap to the back of it is to prevent our clay from sticking to the shape that we're going to use as our mold. We don't use molds all the time in ceramics, but to make a nice platter that has a good round shape or even a square shape, we're going to use a pre-made dish that you can find at the thrift store. So all I've done is check to make sure there aren't too many air bubbles between the plastic and the clay. And then I'm going to use my finger and slide it underneath of there and feel where that lace is at. Let's see. Okay, so it ends about there. And I'm going to take my platter, and we want the lace to go about halfway over. So the lace is on this side, and this side is blank. All right, once we do that, we're gonna come over here and grab this tool. It's called a fettling knife. We use it a lot during slip casting, but we can also use it for this project. And I'm just gonna cut some of this excess off just to make it a little bit easier to flip over. We don't want to cut it too close because we might not have enough to press it in. And there's our nice lace pattern. That extra bit can be saved for another project. And I am just going to move these guys out of my way. I'm going to slide my hand underneath of the fabric, and then we're going to flip it over. Look at how pretty that came out, guys. All right, so I'm pushing my plastic down onto the dish, kind of getting it off of those edges. And now I'm just going to gently push that down into our dish, not enough that we're leaving big pressure marks on there because we don't want to change the thickness or the consistency of our clay. But we do want to make sure that that shape is showing up really well. To be really delicate on the side where the lace is pressed at. And then once you feel like you've gotten that shape really good, you can come back either with a fettling knife or a needle tool. And if you don't have those tools, you could always use a butter knife. It'll work just the same. And I'm going to take my knife and kind of cut towards where the plate is, and I'm just going to do that in a couple of different places to get a good marking of where I'm at. I'm going to come back, and I have my knife flat against where my mold is at. And if you're worried about getting it straight, you can make your cuts wider and then come in. But you see how that's lined up real tight against there? We're gonna do that all the way around. It gets caught in the plastic a little bit, that's okay. And it's easier to get a wider cut than it is and fix it than it is to go too small, because then you can't fix it. So I cut it a little bit wider and then come back in and tighten that up. So in our Intro to Ceramics class, this is one of the basic projects that we start with. There are 3 basic techniques that are really important to have under your belt when you're doing ceramics. So slab being the simple and easiest. We usually start our kids off doing some cookie cutters and stencil work and things like that. For our adult classes, we usually do a slab platter or something similar to this. The next technique that we usually teach is pinch pots, which next time we have a ceramic show, we're gonna do a pinch pot project. And then coils is the last technique. Once you've mastered those, then you can really get into all of the fun sculpting and stuff like that. All right, so it looks a little rough around the edges, but that's fine. Right now we're checking to make sure we're even all the way around. And that looks pretty good to me. The next thing I'm gonna do is just another gentle push to get that slab down into our platter, right where we want it, so we have a flat bottom. Okay. And I'm gonna grab my sponge and I'm gonna squeeze, squeeze, squeeze all of that water out. We just want a lightly damp sponge. And I'm gonna bring that around my edge. And that's gonna give me a nice, smooth finish. It's very important to make sure that none of your clay is going over the edge of your platter. If it does go over and gets caught on that lip, when your piece starts to dry, it will contract. And as the clay starts to contract, if it's grabbed onto the edge, it will cause all of this to crack on your piece, and your whole piece will break. And then I'm going to come in here on the inside, and we want this to be a nice, flat surface with no texture. So even though Sam used that rib tool, sometimes you can still see some of the texture left over from our canvas that we rolled on. And just taking a very dry sponge, we can smooth that out. Being careful not to mess up our lace. Oh, we missed an edge over here. I'm gonna come back on that side. All right, I think that looks pretty good. So at this point, you've pretty much finished the working stage of your piece. You're going to gently cover this with plastic. If you have enough plastic left over from when you originally did the slab, you can pull that up. And we don't want it tight, we just want to lightly drape that over it. And that's going to help it to dry kind of slowly. So if it's really dry in your studio or it's really hot outside, it can cause your piece to dry too quickly, which can cause cracking. So lightly dressing it in plastic helps the moisture slowly escape. It's going to sit on your shelf for a few days, and then you'll be able to take your piece out of your original platter and do some sanding on your red edges, and it'll be ready to go in the kiln.
So here we have an example of our finished piece. It has been left to dry for several days. It is now at the bone dry stage where it can be sanded and placed into the kiln for a kiln firing. We are back in the kiln room with our finished piece. We are going to set it on top of the kiln shelf here and get it ready for firing. I'm going to go ahead and close this lid and lock it. I'm going to set my kiln to cone 04, and when we come back, we're going to glaze our finished piece. It'll now be bisqueware and ready to go. We are back in the kiln room. Our piece has gone through a full cycle on cone 04. This is our finished piece. It has gone from greenware to bisqueware, and we're going to take it up front and we're going to glaze it. All right, so now we are going to do my favorite part of the process, is glazing. But before I do, I'm going to go over the supplies and the materials that we need in order to glaze. So first off, you want to wear an apron so that we don't get any paints or anything on our clothes. We have here a stroke and coat underglaze, which is going to be a gloss glaze once we're done, and this is a clear gloss glaze. I have a little bit of cups so that we can put our glazes into for easy cleanup. And I have 3 sizes of brushes: a small square brush, a large square brush, a fan brush. Over here I have a couple of sponges and some water. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to teach you a technique called the glaze and wipe technique. And I'm going to take my Moody Blue here, and I'm going to take my large square brush here, and I'm going to dip in, and I'm just going to go into all these divots from our lace so that we can capture all of that texture. So all I'm doing is taking glaze, filling up my brush, and then tapping. And I'm going to do this throughout the whole part where our lace was. So here we go. Make sure you don't leave any spots blank. And you can kind of take your brush and wipe as well. Just go over all of that. And really, you'll only need 1 coat for this process here, because we are just wiping this away. When we wipe it away, we're going to use our sponges. We're going to dampen them a little bit, and that way any of the glaze that is left over is just going to be inside. Everything else you're not going to see. You are welcome to just glaze this way and leave it as is, but we like this technique specifically for our laces. Just think it looks absolutely gorgeous when we're all done. Now I'm just wrapping up. I have a couple little white spots I'm going to tap into. All right, we are going to go ahead and let this dry, and we're going to do the next step when we come back.
During the COVID-19 pandemic, if you find yourself in need of food, help is just a phone call away. The Greater Cleveland Food Bank is here for you. Call their help center at 216-738-2067 or or visit their website at greaterclevelandfoodbank.org for more information.
The need for blood is constant, and sometimes that need becomes critical. From accident victims and cancer patients to premature babies and those with blood disorders, hospital patients rely on all of us to make sure that blood is on the shelves and ready to help. That's why the American Red Cross needs you. Make an appointment to give blood today by calling 1-800-RED-CROSS or visit redcrossblood.org. Your one blood donation can help save up to 3 lives.
Welcome back to Clay with CFA. Our glaze has now been dried and it's ready to be sponged off. So I'm gonna dip my sponge into the water, squeeze it out so it's just damp. Now I'm going to do the wiping part of our glaze and wipe technique. Now you can see some of that glazing coming up. And we'll just keep dipping in using our water and our sponge. And now we're starting to see some of that beautiful lacing texture. We just keep going, keep wiping. And remember, you don't want to wipe too hard. You want to use a light pressure so that the glaze still stays in those divots, but we're kind of wiping around it very lightly. You see that really nice texture coming through. This blue is just a nice deep blue. The color name of it is a Stroke and Coat Moody Blue. And right now what you see is not exactly what you're going to get. When we glaze, you'll see a lot lighter colors, almost like a pastel powdery color. But when we put it through the kiln, it's going to get much darker. It's going to get shiny, and it's gonna just be absolutely gorgeous, like glass. So I'm just finishing up here. Just keep going over it until you get the desired look. We want some of that white of the clay coming through while still keeping that blue intact. I'm going to clean up my sides here because you will see that wiping if you don't clean up your clay. So make sure you get those sides real nice. And it will dry quickly, your water, so don't worry too much about that. Clean up your sides. Very nice. I'm going to do one more quick wipe, and then I'm going to use my clean sponge just to go over that an additional time, just to make sure that I get up all that extra blue. See, doesn't that look nice? Okay, one more time. My clean sponge here. Very good. All right, finally, we're just going to do our regular glazing with our gloss glaze, and I'm going to use my fan brush for this part. And I'm just going to go over the entire thing so that we get that all cleaned up. And that way, it will be food safe. If we leave anything not glazed, it'll be matte. It'll be just like the clay, and it can be absorbent. So we want to make sure that we cover our entire piece evenly. I keep my brush wet with the glaze because we don't want that dry brush. It'll just kind of move our glazes around, and you're not going to get that nice desired effect. So I'm kind of working rather quickly because our glaze dries very fast, as you could see. Although this is a clear gloss, it looks blue to us right now, But as it goes through the chemical process of the heat, it breaks down, it melts, and it gives that beautiful lustrous shine that you get from a clear gloss. I'm going in a nice steady motion, and you'd probably want to do anywhere from 1 to possibly 3 coats. You just want to take a look at it and see if there's any streaks. If it is streaky, we want to go the opposite direction in order to get that really nice even look to it. Our lace will kind of come through a little bit, so we want to make sure that we cover up those divots there as well, so that we don't have any holes where bacteria may hide in case we do use this for food display. It's very important. Let's get our sides here. And you can also glaze the bottom of your piece as well once your top has fully dried. Oftentimes we have students who do not glaze the bottom, and you can put a nice piece of felt there so that it doesn't slide around on the table, scratch up the table. But that way you won't be able to wash it in the dishwasher or anything like that. So keep that in mind. Those are just a few different ways that you can glaze your piece here at CFA. Okay, just finishing up here. So when we are doing our additional coats, we want to make sure that this is completely dry. So once it dries, you kind of get an idea on whether or not you want to add any additional coats. But this looks great. I'm going to let it dry, and then we are going to take it back into the kiln one last time, and then we're going to see how our piece turned out. I hope you enjoyed your time with us today here at Cadell Fine Arts, learning how to make a slab rolled platter with lace detail. If you would like to learn more, all you have to do is call this phone number at 216-664-4183 to register for classes. Again, I'm your host, Mrs. Sam, and this is
Miss Amanda, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.